The shadow of the Sphinx, the 40-year reign of Ali Khamenei, the ghost of 79. History remembers the screamers, the ones who stood on the wrought iron balconies of 1979, their fists carved into the air like charcoal lines against a burning sky. They screamed for God, they screamed for justice. But while the crowds roared for a revolution, the real power was being etched in the margins. Look closer at the modern skyline of Tehran, a neon labyrinth of vector lines, concrete bunkers, and violet shadows. In the dead center of that maze sat a man defined not by his voice, but his terrifying stillness. A man whose entire empire was anchored by a single paralyzed right hand resting on a black robe. A hand that didn't need to strike to rule. It only needed to hold. He watched the firebrands burn themselves out one by one. He didn't join the inferno. He quietly built the furnace.
For nearly 4 decades, Iran was steered by a temporary leader. He wasn't the top choice. He wasn't the most holy. He lacked the terrifying divine charisma of the great Ayatollah Khamenei. He was the whisperer in the ear of giants, the shadow that outgrew the man casting it. When the seat of the supreme leader fell empty in the humid summer of 1989, he stepped toward it with a calculated, theatrical hesitation. He pleaded his own inadequacy. He wept. It was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation that forced his arrogant rivals to crown him. He didn't just sit on a throne, he built a fortress around it. He turned the geography of a nation into a literal puzzle, a geometric state where the streets lead nowhere and every alleyway eventually bleeds into a pool of royal blood. The clerics thought they were installing a weak figurehead they could control. They didn't realize they had just handed the keys to their own warden.
To understand the Sphinx, you have to understand the prisoner. Ali Khamenei wasn't born into the velvet cushions of a palace. He was born into the suffocating dust of a one-room basement in the holy city of Mashhad. His childhood was a study in sensory deprivation, a world of gray charcoal lines where siblings shared a single winter coat, and hunger was a constant gnawing presence in the gut. But in the 1970s, the quiet seminary met the violent street. Khamenei became a disciple of fire. 6 times the Savak, the Shah's notorious secret police, dragged him into the dark. In those freezing concrete cells, under the weight of solitary confinement and the muffled screams of broken men echoing down the damp halls, the fracture occurred. He learned the brutal lesson that would define his 40-year reign. Trust is a liability. Ideology is weak. Leverage is absolute. Build a system that can function even when the lights go out. Build a world where you are the only one who knows the exit. Then came June 27th, 1981. A cheap tape recorder packed with military-grade explosives nearly ended the story before the first chapter was finished. The blast ripped through the Abu Zar Mosque, shattering the humid air and mangling flesh. Khamenei survived, but the blast severed the nerves in his right arm, killing it forever, and scarred his vocal cords, reducing his voice to a permanent, raspy whisper. In any other nation, a paralyzed arm and a damaged voice are political death sentences. In the shadow state, they were a divine scepter. He didn't hide the hideous injury, he weaponized it. In the Shia tradition of suffering, a leader who bleeds is a leader who is blessed. He draped himself in a purple shroud of invincibility. It was a daily, throbbing physical reminder that the world was trying to kill him.
From that moment on, the ambitious politician died. The apex predator was born.
Most people look at Iran and think Khamenei's absolute power came from his black turban and his prayers. They are looking at the wrong head of the beast. His power flowed from his ledger, specifically a massive, opaque financial black hole called Setad. What began in the chaotic 1980s as a modest committee to manage abandoned property after the revolution was transformed by Khamenei into a global financial leviathan. He legalized theft. If you were a political dissident, a religious minority, or simply an enemy of the state, Setad seized your home, your farm, your business. By the 2020s, while the Iranian middle class sold their kidneys on the black market just to buy meat, Khamenei was presiding over a deep state valued at nearly $200 billion. He realized early on that a government can be overthrown by street protests, but an economy can be permanently occupied. He gave the Islamic Revolutionary Corps, the IRGC, a seat at every corporate board table in the country. They ceased being a military and became a mafia. They built the dams, they ran the airports, they controlled the black market smuggling routes that bypassed the world's crippling sanctions. It was a brilliant, deeply cynical paradox. The more the international community choked Iran with sanctions, the more the octopus tightened its grip on the only remaining lifelines. While the people starved in the light, the shadow state grew fat in the dark. By 2025, the axis of resistance was a house of cards in a hurricane. Khamenei's 40-year geopolitical game of chess had finally caught up to him. The devastating 12-day war with Israel in June of that year had gutted his proxies. Hezbollah was decapitated, Hamas was ash. But the real rot was inside the walls. The youth were no longer afraid of the dark. The echoes of the 2022 protests over the murder of Mahsa Amini had morphed into a slow-burn civil war. The morality police were hunting girls in the streets, shooting them in the eyes with birdshot. Evin Prison was an assembly line of torture. The supreme leader sat in his bunker, his dead arm in his lap, ordering the slaughter of the children of his own revolution. On the morning of February 28, 2026, the master of strategic patience finally ran out of time. Operation Epic Fury. Joint Allied strikes tore through the Tehran sky, shattering the silence. For the first time in over a century, an Iranian head of state was wiped from the map by a direct decapitation strike. The bunker collapsed in on itself, crushing the Sphinx under the weight of his own concrete paranoia. The world held its breath, expecting the octopus to die with its head. But the labyrinth was meticulously designed to survive its architect. As the smoke rose over Tehran and the blood dried on the marble, the system didn't collapse, it simply clicked into a cold, predetermined new gear. Within days of the funeral, the transition was complete. In a subterranean room where Revolutionary Guard commanders stood with their hands resting heavily on their sidearms, the assembly of experts announced the successor, Mujtaba Khamenei. The Revolutionary Republic had finally dropped the mask, revealing its true, hideous form, a hereditary theocracy. Mujtaba, a secretive, stone-faced 56-year-old cleric who had never held public office but had spent decades managing his father's intelligence networks, his billions, and his assassinations, was now the keeper of the labyrinth.
The IRGC didn't just install him, they installed him. He was their accountant of death. Ali Khamenei's final toxic gift to his country was a flawless blueprint for absolute control. He taught the world a cold, simple truth. If you control the money and the military, the will of the people is just an annoying sound you can easily drown out with the siren of a police van.
Ali Khamenei was a man who, after being broken in a cell and blown up in a mosque, decided that his own survival was exactly synonymous with the survival of God's will. He died with his family, surrounded by the ghosts of those he outlived and the monsters he created. The fortress still stands, but its walls are cracking under the weight of airstrikes and generations of domestic rage. Is a hereditary successor the beginning of the end, or is the octopus simply too rich and too heavily armed to ever let the system fail? Because dynasties born in fire rarely fade quietly. They either fall or strike back. And the story of Iran continues with a son who may see something simpler: revenge. Quiet, patient, and inevitable. Perspective is everything. Drop a comment with your city and country below. Tell us if you think the shadow will finally break. If you want to see the secret accounts and the blood money that funds this shadow state, hit subscribe. We're going deeper next time.